All right, folks, welcome back to another exciting edition to the Hounds of Business presents Mike King Biz Radio on ESPN RVA 106.1 FM. If you don't know who I am Mike Asherbrander, the Redneck Connector, proud and humble leader of the Hounds of Business community. And folks, as true as every week, we got a show for you. They just keep getting more awesome every week. We are going to be joined by the one and only Megan Robinson. She is founder and CEO of Leader Experience and tackling one of the biggest blind spots in growing companies today, folks, promoting high performers into leadership roles. All right. Because a lot of folks are not equipping them to succeed. All right. So we're going to dive straight into this. Don't go anywhere. Tell your friends. And by the way, Mr. Homer, hey, we love you being here. And don't worry about the emojis. We'll find you new ones, brother. And we've got Royce Blake, Mr. Radio Voice himself, and Sabrina. So good to see you. Let's get this party started, folks. This lady is amazing, brilliant as she is big hearted. Let's get started, y'all.
Looks like your business might be in a bit of a pickle. Don't you worry about a thing. You ain't alone in this. You're just a success story waiting to happen. Trust me on that. Every bump in the road is just an opportunity wearing a clever disguise. Welcome to the Hounds of Business community, where we don't just sit around twiddling our thumbs. Nope. We turn those obstacles into mighty fine stepping stones. This here's a place where high-level entrepreneurs and sharp professionals gather to grow their businesses and mindsets, kind of like how a good old gumbo needs the right ingredients to be something special. Ideas thrive here, and collaborations, well, they're as natural as sweet tea on a hot day. Success, it's a journey, and we're fixing to walk that road right beside you. Now, don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn for all the latest tips and insights. We're talking about the kind of wisdom that'll keep you ahead of the game. And while you're at it, head on over to our YouTube channel. We've got ourselves a treasure trove of videos, from expert interviews to webinars, everything you need to stay sharp in this fast-moving world of business. The Hounds of Business community? Well, we ain't just a network, we're a movement. So why not come on and be part of something bigger? Join us today and let's turn your business journey into a real Southern success story. Together, we'll achieve greatness, just like crawfish and singing on a Friday night.
All right, how about it, folks? Let's bring up Megan Robinson and see if she knows anything about crawfish and singing on a Friday night. She might
Is
surprise
it
us.
is it crawfish or crayfish?
This is why I don't throw zingers at this one. All right, she is sharp beyond belief. Well, before you embarrass me, how are you today?
I am lovely, thanks, Mike. I mean, you put a food question out there, and that's totally my jam. So
Uh, you know, I appreciate it. My head just swells, and then you pop it. So, but folks, we're gonna have a good time. Megan, it didn't take long to realize, she is a super pro. She just calls it like she sees it, and she has a real passion for this. And so let me start with this, Megan. Give us a little bit of background for what brought you today. As the leader and founder of this company, you have, like, correct me if I'm wrong, 40,000 hours of expertise across 6 countries, right? So it's an understatement to say that you're trusted by organizations to ramp up new management, stop communication breakdowns, and really reduce burnout, really increase that. So give us a little mini story of how you came today, how this got
yeah.
started.
Well, it's going to sound like a long one, but I swear I'll be short. Actually, I started as 13-year-old Megan, wanted to be the VP of marketing, and that was where I went. I was very focused on vision, very clear direction, and so I went to university. I started advertising agencies. I worked in Fortune 500 companies. I went back to agencies. I even started my own sales and marketing agency.
Wow.
And so really got that cross of different expertise, different experience. Realized my business partner and I weren't a great fit. So took stock of what I wanted to do next, how I wanted to give back, where some of those natural talents were. And I used to call it business therapy. Everything, right? And you're a great service provider. You're not just a technician or a technical expert. You're a great business therapist, right? You're listening to
Oh, yeah.
someone's problems and challenges. You're working outside of your discipline area. And that was what I loved so much about my role in connecting with businesses and looking at it. So I went ahead, got a coaching certification, and really focused on my coaching practice and where we wanted to address those challenges. And I found that those mid-level managers were not being heard. They weren't being supported. because you have so many executive coaches out there. And I love executive coaching. We still do executive coaching, but the middle managers are the ones that are struggling the most, right? They don't know what they need to do. They don't have a lot of the tools built up. They're thrown into the fire. I just had this conversation earlier, right? Oh, let's throw them in and see if they sink or swim right into the deep end. And it's painful. And most people are drowning, frankly.
Yeah, that's the very 1800s. That's very, very John Wayne stuff. No offense, but I do. And folks, this is my words, not Megan's. She's much more eloquent. But when she was helping me just voluntarily, it reminded me of Caesar Milan, right? The dog whisperer. Like, you saw way past stuff, the surface level, and you were able to identify things that usually would take people months or years to see. And that's why I had to have you on the show, because people need that. We're in a hyper competitive market. We have so many changes, political market changes, and the game's not the same, folks. And if you're struggling, it's not you. You just need a guide to help you through this. So let's get going, because I'm already super pumped. And look, the hounds are showing up in droves, y'all. Thank you so much. All right, let's take this from the top. What's the real reason, in your great experience and expertise, that so many top performers crash and burn when they get promoted to manager? Right, so they're a rock star, and they're like, "Wow, let's make this a manager," and then it's like, what happens there?
Well, I'm going to say probably everyone on this call who has been promoted into that manager position feels that pain immediately, right? They're so excited for that promotion. They feel so good. They are such a good technical expert that they deserved, and they worked hard for that promotion. And then they get into it and they don't know what to do. They don't know what's expected of them. There's a whole new world and different requirements, different job duties. And most of the time, they love to go back to what they know, right? They're like, oh, well, I'm really good at this expertise, and I'm going to train them on how to do it exactly like how I did it. And for some reason, it doesn't work out.
Right.
And I will say, there's statistics out there. It's something like 60% of new managers will fail in that first role within the first 2 years.
No kidding.
They just churn and burn them. And I'll say, from my expertise and what I see, is a lack of expectations, a lack of clarity in those expectations, because what's you're responsible for as an individual contributor is very different than what you're responsible for as a manager. And it's not just the things that are in your job description, it's the things that aren't in your job description, right? It's how do you develop people? How do you handle conflict? No one's job description says handle conflict with employees, but if you're a manager, you better start doing that. It's part of that responsibility.
But true or false, they're not being equipped. They're just being assumed that, hey, just figure it out, and then it becomes
You've seen managers before. You know what you need to do, and there's no clarity with it. And everyone's expectations are different. And as you develop in those roles, you start to see in that rear view mirror exactly what it should have been, or exactly what you want from other people. But you're in it too closely to know what it looks like for yourself. No one is telling you, no one's having the conversations with you, and no one's there actually to help you figure that out. I do an exercise all the time in workshops, asking people, what do you expect from other managers? What should people expect from you? And people just start drawing blanks. And part of it's the results, right? Part of it's the support. Part of it's developing and growing other people. Part of it, I was just chatting with someone else, right? They were all about managing their team and coaching them and supporting them and making sure that their team was rock solid and trained. I said, well, what about the other departments? What about the rest of the organization? And that was a complete blind spot. And frankly, that's 50% of your job, is how you're connecting and relating to others. But to your question, sorry. Yes.
No, this is great. I'm taking notes.
Right? Thank you. Most people think that this is going to happen by osmosis. And that's the number one myth that I see that really feeds this blind spot, is they think, well, if we invite them to the meeting, they're going to figure out what they need to do next time. If they're in the room, if they see me handle this, they'll know how to do it next time. And that's probably not going to happen. You don't know what they learned. You don't know what they're picking up. You don't know if they're actively engaged. And that's a really big challenge, where we make a wide assumption that other people are just picking it up along the way when they're really not.
Oh, well, see, and I've worked, with inside Fortune 1000 companies, some of the well-known companies. And I've seen that. There's like, well, put it off to HR. Well, okay, is HR equipped for that? And here's what I like about you and your approach. It was quick. It was evident. You're a systems thinker, right? Like, so you look at things in silos, but you're able to tie them together. And that's where people drop the ball, in my estimation. And also, people say, I want to have a better culture, but what's culture made of? People. And if the people aren't equipped and they're not on board and they don't have the skills and they're not, then the culture is never going to happen. And you identified that. So that's with the whole Caesar thing, right? Like for me, I'm not going to mark you as that, but you know what I mean? Like it was just nice for you to come in and go, that's the issue. And I'm like, whoa, like do you have x-ray vision? Like you've done this enough before, right?
Well, I think it's one of those like understands like, because you do the same thing. That's what makes you such a fantastic connector. And that's why the Hounds community is so impressive in what that culture looks like, because you've been intentional about that. The challenge is it's so hard to see it for yourself, right? We all struggle with that. You could do the exact same thing to someone else, but it's impossible for you to see it for yourself. As much as you try and coach yourself, and believe me, I do it all the time, trying to think, okay, well, how would I coach myself through this situation? Let me take a moment and kind of look at it holistically. But it is really, really hard. And particularly if you're trying to coach someone on your team. There is such a challenge, and that's where I think a lot of the responsibilities, frankly, of managers and leaders is to be a coach for others.
Right.
But no one gets training on how to do that. We all know that's what great leadership is going to look like when you're able to coach your team, but no one taught you how to coach someone. No one taught you what that looked like, and it continues to exacerbate the situation. So trying to support them through it becomes even more painful because you're in the thick of it, because your goals are their goals and you're too tied to it, and there's too much pressure on both situations to really have those learning moments.
Okay, you set it up. We're going to knock it down. Let me give a shout out to the one and only Mike King before we take a deep dive, because I got it. I can't wait. Mike King Biz Radio, ESPN. Thank you so much for the opportunity to push others up. Very few people push up their community like Mike King. They put him on the Jumbotron during the ball games, folks. Like, he ain't asking for it. But that's because he's such a great asset. So thank you for our partnership to push people up at the international level, my friend. And hey, shameless plug. Listen, if you're building a business, if you have that passion and you're willing to pay the price and go for it, don't do it alone. Don't do it alone. Plug into an ecosystem, whether it's ours at the Hounds of Business or if it's just anything. Get connected with leaders like Megan and these folks in the comments and on there. Don't do it. You got a passion. You got an impact and a legacy, dadgummit. No strays out there. You can find us on YouTube, Hounds of Business. You can find us on LinkedIn, Redneck1. That's me, Mike Asherbrenner. Or you can send an old school carrier pigeon. All right, I still take those. Just weather pending. All right. So if Megan's like, hey, I'm not going to pick on her. You got to see her. She will get me. All right. So let's get back to this, because you have some concept that I thought I never heard before, player coach problem. And you addressed it, but I want to get the answer if you don't mind. So when we're talking about promoting someone who is great at their job, and you pointed out rightfully so, that doesn't mean they're going to be great at leading people, or they're not ready yet, or could be, right? So explain the player coach problem, right? And how you've seen that, and why does that happen?
Oh, that is a long. Well, I will say with the player coach is when you have your star player and you put them in a coaching role. And I'll say my best example is a sales rep. And that sales rep, right? They're your best sales rep, and you're like, cool, let's promote them. Everyone knows where this is going, right? Now you've promoted your best sales rep, but you also don't want them to stop selling, right? Because they're your best sales rep. So now they have these responsibilities of coaching the team and making them great sales reps, and continuing to have their own book of business. And I feel like everyone just took this like giant eye roll with you, right? Oh my gosh, how are they supposed to do both? And frankly, this is where you see those mid-managers that are just getting crushed, because they have those individual contributor responsibilities, and they're also responsible to coach and manage and lead the team. If you've been leveled up in that way, if you have one of those managers, most likely what they're most comfortable with and where they want to spend their time is on their own work. And so that's that default, right? It's uncomfortable to do things new. It's uncomfortable to do all the other pieces. And they struggle dramatically in this. And then they get promoted. Maybe they get promoted again, hopefully, they keep going on. but they never really learn because they've kept so much of that individual contributor responsibilities, those quotas, those needs, even the clients, right? They never learn how to let go of that and how to get work done through others. So they continue to struggle with it. And you see it sometimes all the way. I was working with a group of VPs, and we were still talking about time management and delegation at a VP level because it'd been so hard for them through their promotion. They've just grown up through the organization and they never really got that distance from it. So you see a lot of player coaches, it leads to a lot of burnout. It's a really big struggle for people to adapt. Like we said earlier, those expectations aren't clear on how to really address that. And I will say, you see in tech companies now, oftentimes a lot of those mid managers are getting riffed. They don't find the value of them anymore. So you start seeing this trend of middle management starting to disappear because they're not adding the value because they're too busy doing the individual contributor work.
Oh,
I can talk on about the impacts and downstream. If anyone wants to talk about that, or we can save that for another time, but it's going to get nasty.
Oh my goodness. And it's relevant now more than ever. This is not just some theory thing we're talking about you can get to later, company leaders. We're talking about now, the competitive edge, right? Innovation. This is not just, oh, that's nice. So because on that, correct me if I'm wrong, you're the expert. These managers are struggling in silence because if the culture isn't like, hey, tell us how you feel, then a lot of I've seen it, right? So they're struggling in silence. Is that right?
Oh, I think there is a lot of silence. It's the silence of the expectation, and it's getting noisier and noisier now. I think where a lot of people are frustrated. Oh, everyone expects so much from me, or employees aren't what they used to be, or no one wants to work hard anymore. So there is a little bit of that silence that's going on. I think it's mostly the gap of awareness and understanding and clarity in these jobs and roles. So I'll say it actually starts to impact senior leaders. Those are the people that are suffering in silence the most
Mm.
because they're the ones that are now putting out all the fires that the mid managers used to solve for. Everything's starting to roll uphill instead of downhill as it should be going. So that's where you see a lot of that suffering. Sometimes there's an awareness. Most of the time, they're getting really, really bad feedback, right? Oh, this should be part of you, or I need you to own that project. All this communication that doesn't really make sense to them, and they don't understand what they need to do differently to be successful.
Oh, you got a cheerleading section in the comments. They're like, "Oh, yes, oh heck yes." Well, let's dive into that if you don't mind, right? Because you always talk about fix it before it festers, and then companies are years or decades going, "Well, why are we having problems?" And it's almost impossible to trace back. So, bear with me. You always talk about solve the people problems before they blow up, right? And so, walk me through that. Let me ask the question that got it. What's different about your coaching first approach, right? That actually sticks when most trainings don't.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple layers to that, right? First part of that is talking about culture and what's evolved with that. The second piece is how do we get people to actually solve people problems? And I saw it in the comments earlier that being the boss versus being the leader. I'm trying to find that now. Someone had commented that, so thank you. Oh, Royce, thank you for that. That being the boss versus being the leader is where you're starting to shift from management into leadership. And it's that people versus tasks. And most of the time, we're focused on the tasks, we're not focused on the people aspect of it. And for us to really be effective on addressing the people side, I'll say the professional skills, it's a development over training, right? You can't train someone to push a widget or pull a lever or fill out this report. You have to develop them into caring about the people and how to navigate interpersonal conversations and conflict and how to be situationally aware or have the emotional intelligence to be able to have the effective conversations. And so what we've done is really blended leadership development in a traditional L&D or learning development approach, which is, I would say, all of those really boring trainings and seminars that you've been to, or those like click a button, go through the video while you multitask on something else. With the best, right? You've never gone through a couple of those like next, sure, did the training.
Yep.
But what we focus more on is the coaching side. And so that's why I've really named it that coaching first approach. Because for us to develop leaders and to really understand, not just train them on how to push a button or what it looks like, we have to ask them questions that internalizes it.
Right.
We have to move something from a theory into application. How do you apply this? If you do have if you have a tough conversation to have, how do you have that? What are the tough conversations you're not having right now? And give people a lot of those skills and tools so that they can start applying it quickly, so they can answer their own questions, so they start reflecting more of their experiences and not just look at something from 10,000-foot level.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna have to call you out on live stream. Can you come to the Hounds of Business so we can have the other 30 minutes on our flagship? Because this, we can make a panel, we can rock this, because people are, man. So if you would, maybe take the liberty here. Maybe you have a short story, about how you helped turn things around after you partnered with these companies. But what I want to know is, and what the audience wants to know, what's the cost, the real talk, like the real cost of letting these issues go unchecked? Just burying your head in the sand, let HR deal with it. Nah. What is the real cost that you've seen in your extensive experience?
I'm going to go for two. I'm going to say the first cost is going to be senior level sanity. If those senior level leaders, they will start being firefighters more. They are going to get more things pushed onto their plates. They're not going to be able to be strategic in the ways that they need to, because they're dealing with all these other things that they shouldn't have to. You start catching on what I should or shouldn't have to be doing. That's a big sign that there's a leadership gap. I'll say from a financial cost impact, there's a lot of studies, right? This is kind of that squishy side of things. How do you really measure leadership? But one of the studies from Blanchard came out that says organizations are pretty much giving up about 7% of their total annual sales for bad leadership. So if whatever your annual sales are, take 7% of it, that's what it's costing you every single year. And that goes into things like employee retention, right? No one wants to work for bad managers. People leave their manager, they don't leave the company. It goes into issues like customer satisfaction, how the quality of products, the productivity of products, how people are even dealing or navigating their customer conversations, how internally you're going through that, and overall employee productivity. That's a pretty big number for most people. I always like to break things down a little bit more specifically. So I found some studies about just employee engagement, right? If we just look, and we know leadership affects more than employee engagement, right? The retention piece of it. If you look at engagement, based off of Gallup's finding that there's about 17% of coworkers that are actively disengaged, and a disengaged employee costs about 34% of their salary. So if you multiply those together, you get just under 6% of your total salaries and wages. You could say that's directly impacted by your leadership department.
Here's what I hear you saying. Instead of throwing more dollars into things like we need more sales development, we need more marketing, hey, how about you stop bleeding money because of cultural issues that you either may not see or may not want to admit? And I'm looking in the mirror, leaders. I'm telling you, it's so easy to go, nah, but when you get real, then you can solve the problem. And then you can enlist guys like Megan who can come in objectively and say, hey, here's some things to consider. And your style is great. You don't come in with a sledgehammer to start knocking the walls down. You're very intentional. You listen, you really try to find the nucleus of the issue and wrap around a solution that fits the company. You're not coming in there. And maybe that's the answer to my next question is because I want to talk about how you actually build leaders, right? So now we know there's issues, but what are you doing to solve them? So, because I know the audience, right? A lot of people out there, they're thinking, who needs, some fancy corporate program, right? What do they really need? So they don't need a whole bunch of click this, check the boxes type of training. What is it that they really benefit from? Some of the processing, maybe.
I would say that there's a couple different things, and what we've done actually feed into it. I think that the best first step that you can take is to understand and identify those expectations. We talked about it at the very beginning, that gap being there. So oftentimes where we start with organizations is actually looking at what their leadership competencies are. Everyone has technical competencies. Everyone knows what's expected from them or the skills they need to develop to be proficient at their job from a technical aspect. And I've seen it in banks, I've seen it in manufacturing, see it across different industries. What they don't always look at is the professional competencies. How do you define great leadership at your organization? And it's not just communication, right? Because we all need to be great communicators, but what does good communication look like at your organization? What are the things that you really value, part of the culture that you want to have, and the expectations that you see from other people, this is where you start to pin down exactly what it looks like. We do a whole process with a lot of stakeholder interviews. You can do focus groups. You really have to deep dive into an organization's culture to understand what they value and what that's going to look like for their leadership. Because once you set those standards, once you get clarity around it, this is where it starts feeding a lot of the feedback you get. It's where their performance reviews start changing. It's where your conversations start to change and evolve. And eventually, yes, it is where you can give them some development opportunities to help shore up some of those skill gaps.
Yeah, and folks on air, Sabrina's chiming in saying, yeah, she's solid. I mean, average of 30K per month loss of a company revenue. I mean, even if you have a giant company, who wants to throw money out the window? It's goofy. So, oh gosh, we only got a few minutes. So if someone out there is listening and saying, dadgummit, this is us, right? Like, hey, we're ready to tackle this. We'd like to explore it. What's their first move?
Well, it depends on what they want to tackle and what they want to explore. Just their leadership gap. I mean, obviously, you can always call me and my organization. We're great at supporting that. Definitely start talking with your HR partners. I will say in a post-COVID world, HR has really changed and evolved their seat at the table from a senior leadership level. But I will say get curious on where these gaps are. Curiosity, listening to others, really learning where those pieces are so that you can address the real problems. I just had a conversation with a leader last week, and they wanted to start a mentorship program. I said, great, why are we doing a mentorship program? What do you want to do about that? Oh, well, we want to fix employee retention. That's not going to do it. You have got the wrong tool for that problem. So really understanding what those gaps are so that you're able to address them wholeheartedly. And I would be willing to look at the behaviors and things that you are doing at the top level that is encouraging or maintaining those other behaviors, because you do have a much larger impact in that. So it will take a little bit of that vulnerability, most likely, to shore up some of those gaps as you make the changes necessary to support the changes in others.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And here's what I like about what you do, because I've seen it firsthand. You've been instrumental in a lot of groundbreaking things for us in our community, my businesses. You approach this like a doctor. No one goes to their doctor. Hopefully, no one goes to their doctor and says, I hope you don't try to sell me something today. No, you're going because you got an issue. You want to explore maybe a checkup to make sure preventative measures. And that's your approach. It's not a marketing tool for you. It's the way you do business. And that's why we're here today, because I want folks to know you're not the only option, but you're our option, right? You are the play. And if you're not the solution, here's what I love about you and your company. You're going to give them what they need, not just what you want to sell. And that's what makes us special here. That's what I love about it. You put people's best interests first. And I know it's blushy time, but it's the God's honest truth. And I want to see more of that. That's what we stand for. So in the last minute, what do you want to leave? So what's your final truth bomb for someone who is just sick of the leadership drama? They're like, you know what? I'm ready to take a fix. Obviously, tap into you and all your resources. You got so many great articles. But what's your practical advice? Did it take a baby step? Like, what can they do today, right now, to make that first move?
Ooh, I'm going to give two first moves for it. The first, like I was just kind of alluding to before, is look at what you are doing to feed some of those negative outcomes. How are you addressing those issues with people? When something happens, what are you doing? Because that will be eye-opening. What are you permitting or allowing to have happen that shouldn't be? That's also inaction or action are both fueling it and fueling the culture that you're creating with that. And the second piece is being willing to listen to others. If you're doing a 360, if you're feeding more insights, go ahead, ask around, see what's really happening at some different levels, and make sure that you're getting those insights and just listening before you start solving those problems.
Megan, you are amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We would definitely, if you're willing to come back, I would definitely want to schedule one on the HLB Live. Folks, go to the website and go to her website. There's so many resources. Just start there. E-Leader, so eleaderexperience.com, folks. eleaderexperience.com. Go check out the resources, have a conversation, and stop throwing money out the window and investing in migraine medicine, right? So thank you so much, folks in the comments, Hounds, friends of the Hounds. We will see you back next week, folks. More to come. Go check out the website, watch this, comment. Thank you, Megan. You're amazing.
Thank you, Mike. Lovely, lovely conversation. And thanks for sharing your incredible community.
You got it. My pleasure. See you next time, folks. Thank you so much. Thank y'all for stopping by. Be sure to follow, share, and like, and send me a message if you had fun today. Y'all come back now.